Adam Savage here in my cave, and I know I'm in a different spot than I normally am at the start of a video, but that's because of what this video is about. Yes, to my right are my Rounders poker chips in the case that I built, and I know I've already done a couple of videos about them, so why are they here again? Well, because once you have poker chips, of course, the next step is to play some poker. And in addition to some players, you need a surface to play upon. And that is what I'm about to do. I'm about to actually make a replica of one of Teddy KGB's poker tables from Rounders to play with my Rounders poker chips. And it's going to sit right on top of my white oak table here in the display area, which is why this is where I'm sitting. Now, this is a one-day build that I have to complete in a day because a whole bunch of friends of mine are in town for San Francisco's Sketch Fest, and we're gonna have a poker party here tomorrow night. So those are the stakes. Let's get building. Now, the dimensions of this poker table are gonna be 47 inches in diameter, because that fits nicely inside a 48-inch wide piece of plywood. I had an interesting issue with the size of this table right at the bat because I don't have any 48-inch wide material here. I have all my wood cut to 24 by 48 to store in the wall behind the camera now. So last night I did a biscuit join of 2 sheets. I know, I could have just bought a 4x4, but since it was the end of the night and I realized it late, I just clamped up and glued these together. So this will be the base of the table, and then I'm going to cut a border for the padded border of the table, and then cover the whole thing in felt and vinyl. But first, I have to make a bunch of curved cuts in big pieces of plywood, and that's going to require a specialized piece of equipment. This is the tool I'm going to use to make all those curved cuts. Yes, it's a router, a Milwaukee router. Milwaukee was one of the tool sponsors for Savage Builds, and I ended up with this, and I really like it. It's actually a nice, simple, straightforward router. And to make large curved cuts, I actually built a custom router radius cutter. I took a long piece of plywood, I traced out this ring shape so that I could replace this with my plywood. I drilled 3 holes I could attach the plywood with the screws, and this is the piece of plywood I ended up with. It clamps to the bottom like that, and each of these holes is a specific distance from the cutting edge of a 1/2 inch router bit. So you can cut any radius up to probably 34 inches, which is 68-inch diameter. That's a nice big round cut. So this is a tool I'll probably have in my shop for many, many decades. And it starts its first cutting today. One thing Milwaukee does that a lot of tool companies do is they use these 1024 Torx-headed panhead screws. It's like, do you really need to use Torx-headed? I mean, I got to go find the special bit and everything, so I replaced them with some 1024 Phillips head screws just to make it easier to swap stuff out. I have a ton of Phillips head screwdrivers. And there you go. That is all that's required to attach this. I drilled these holes on my mill, so they are super exact. And the first radius I'm cutting is 47 inches. That's the first diameter I'm cutting, and so I'll be going to this mark right here for my pivot. Cool. Great. And then I'm going to cut on here. Right, great. .23.5, this is 47-inch outer diameter, right? Yes. Okay, so 23.5, which means this guy. Right. Then I want to be able to, So I got to set the depth so it cuts all the way through the plywood. Depth is set. I know. Here's the issue that I'm grappling with right now. I need these to be, what I'm making is the rail. I'm making the padded rail. But my rail needs to be perfect half rounds, which means I need my pivot to be right in the middle here on this guy. So I need to just make a little bit of a slice here so I can drill down through the center and be right at that apex point. Right? Don't need to be perfectly lined up here. Yeah, that's it. All right, so. Good, I feel good about that. Those are all clamped together. That's clamped together. This is indicative of how small this shop is how difficult it is to build something like a 4-foot round tabletop. It's just the reality of this space. All right, so now I want to go, I want to do an inside radius. Okay, now that means I need to actually measure from a different spot. Okay, so there's my main, that's my proper radius and everything's held in orientation. Good. Now, I am going to measure from the outside of the router bit to the pivot point. Same spot. I know if you're a carpenter, there's probably a better way to do this and you do this all the time and you're yelling at me at the screen because I'm doing it in a less efficient way. I recognize that. It's quick and dirty over here. All right, let's take this all apart and see what we got. Great. Okay, so now, this bad boy. Smaller table than I thought. Got your chips here. This is a 6-person table. I was hoping it was a 7-person table, but it's 6. And maybe even a little tight. That's fine. Okay, so if that's the deal, dealy bob, then the radius of this thing wants to be like about here to there. Okay, so what is that dimension? Dimension is give or take 22. Okay, so one more big router cut to make. Oh my God. This, so much dust. This is crazy. Oh. Now, that's the top. This is the bottom. And because I'm laying this down on my table, I want to give it some structural stability. So I'm going to add a rail along the inside here, but I have to figure out exactly what diameter my table is. So let's measure that. 42.
I have 76.
Woohoo! All right, so now I have to attach the two halves of the rail together, and I have to do that before, yeah, I have to attach these two halves to each other. So that is a biscuit joiner moment. Biscuit joiner? What's a biscuit joiner? Well, it's the greatest thing to happen to doweling. Let's see, we can do one there, there, and there. Boy. A biscuit joiner. Well, that is a biscuit. I know, it looks like a little chunk of wood, but they're called biscuits. And what happens is, you use a biscuit joiner, i.e. this little bad boy, and it actually has a blade in it that sticks out and cuts this little radius that matches that. So what you do is you go meow, 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 and then you fill the slots with glue. I can talk about it, but I could just show it to you because I'm about to do it. Anyway, you fill the slots with glue, you put the biscuits in, the biscuits soak up the glue, they suck it up, they expand, and they hold really tightly. It's awesome. Way better than dowels. Wood glue is, without a doubt, my favorite of all the glues. It is the one glue that does what it says it does, glue wood, better than almost anything else you could imagine. You glue two pieces of wood together with the right amount of wood glue, with the right procedure, and it's harder to get apart. It's like the wood will fail before the glue does. That's how good it is. Yeah, I really dig that stuff. All right, so now we join. The nice thing about biscuit joining over doweling, and the reason it's vastly better, is because with biscuit joining, you can actually move the part a little bit. You actually have a little bit of room to adjust things, and that's humongous. That's good enough. This doesn't have to be perfect because it's going to get its strength from being mounted to the tabletop itself. So I'm not super concerned about that part. But I do need to route the outside edge of this bad boy. And that means I need to clamp it down. Again, since it gets covered with padding, it's fine if it's a little bit marked up. I don't really mind that. All right. It's time to start actually assembling my table. Oh, I'm gonna hit that with a little bit of sandpaper, but remember I said I wanted it to clear the outside of that table and have a little structural stability, which is why I routed this channel in here. But how does this channel get used? Well, here's the thing, is I'm going to use a technique called kerfing, in which you run a piece of plywood through the table saw many times and make shallow cuts, actually in this case quite deep cuts, very close together, and it allows me to bend my plywood on a radius. But that's way more of a radius than I need for this poker table, so I went with a slightly wider spacing on this test piece, and this I really like. So this weekend, while I was dealing with some other stuff, I came in here and I did some kerfing of enough wood to go all the way around this table. And that's what I'm about to do. I'm about to circulate around this table with this stuff. And the slot is just big enough. Oh, it's so sexy to fit. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Time for some gluing. I'm gonna glue from here to here. So that whole thing that you see carpenters do on YouTube, where they paint every facet of the joints they're gluing, I'm here to tell you, that's real. It's just really good practice to do it. The more you do it, the more secure your joints are. The fact is, I'm not building this table to a super high tolerance. It's a little loosey-goosey, and if you look up close, there are some little hitches in its get-along, but I don't really care because I'm gonna use this to be playing poker on. It's not like we're solving world peace on this thing. What I really want it to be is solid. And it's gonna look just fine. We're gonna hide a lot of crimes with the cloth, that's for sure. What is this? This is a 22 gauge nailer, and I didn't know how amazing 22 gauge nailers could be until Tom Sachs introduced me to the magic of them. They make these little tiny staples. They're super, super thin, and you can't even barely see them in the wood. They're amazing. It's one of my new favorite tools. This is totally amazing what's just happened. I screwed up. So I cut all these this weekend thinking, I've definitely got enough. But I did not measure. I was off by 1.25 inches. Oh, well, all right. I can easily fill that piece, and I will. There we go. What an idiot. Can't believe I didn't measure it. I was so lazy. All right, here we go. Brilliant. I feel like I'm taking out every power tool in the shop. I am using a lot of different tools. Honestly, this is a project that could be done with simply a drill and a jigsaw. You don't need a lot of complexity for this one. Everyone has their own way of working that utilizes the tools at their disposal, and that's fine. There's no one right way to do it. There's just the way that you like to do it. So in order to fill this gap, I need to kerf one last piece of plywood that wide, which is great, because now, because I didn't film the kerfing, you get to see how kerfing works. So what I'm doing is I'm going to be setting the depth of my cut to be close to the sort of 2/3 point of the wood. I made a pencil mark here on my sled, and what you'll see is, I'm going to just start slightly in. I make a cut. That's a kerf cut. Then I move the left edge over to the pencil mark and cut again. And I just keep on doing that. That should be enough. Now, a really important note here. This is repetitive, boring work. And the fact is, everyone I know who's ever been injured on a table saw has been injured doing repetitive, boring work. It's how you can zone out. So you sit there and you're going, nyong, voop, nyong, voot, nyong, voot, and then you can start to look elsewhere. And that's when you're going to lose the tips of your fingers. And it requires a lot of vigilance to do tedious work with specific attention, but it's required on the table saw. You just can't let that attention lapse. These are really important to you. Yeah, that was the only other note. I have another safety note for you. Nail guns are the bane of every freaking employer because there's so many creative ways you can harm yourself with them. The fact is when you are about to, I'm actually going to unplug this so I don't accidentally do it. When you're about to put a nail into something, you want to make sure your hand's not on the other side. That seems totally obvious, right? You move your fingers apart. That's great. You want to, or you get a piece of wood backing and you do it like that. But let me explain that I've seen people use a thick piece of wood as a backing for their nail gun and accidentally drive two nails, where the first one went in and the second one followed the first one and drove this first one right through the finger of a friend of mine at ILM. So nothing on your body should be in line with anything close to the path of the staple as it goes through the wood. In fact, I'll even go so far as to say your fingers should be separated from the nail's path by the radius of its distance. That means if it's a 1-inch nail, you don't want your fingers within 1.25 inches of anywhere that could go, because I've seen nails go through wood at right angles to show up and enter your tender flesh. Be careful when using nail guns. Be aware that those nails can travel and they seek out human flesh. And once they've tasted blood, it's all over. I think the next step is kind of exciting. The next step is to take this over to my white table and make sure that it drops down on top. Pretty sure it will. Oh no, I was pretty sure from the measurements that was going to work, but you never know. Okay, it's time to move on from the woodworking portion to the soft goods portion. It's now all about foam and cloth and vinyl and staples, and that's what I've got here. I am going to, in order, separate the ring from the base of the table. I'm going to attach some foam to the base of the table, then I'm going to put on some speed cloth, which I'll talk about in a minute. Then I'm going to attach some foam to the rail, and then I'm going to cut and trim the vinyl to the rail, and then I'm going to staple it all together, and then I'm going to screw the whole thing together. I know what I'm going to do. Okay, the biggest issue here is that I've got screws that are going through the main table into the arm, into the rail. And I'm just going to screw them together. But when you have felt in there, the felt can grab the screw and totally torque, which means I could spend all this time making the felt nice and tight and then screw it up with the screw. It also means I have to get my alignment perfectly right. And I've got the screws and I've got an alignment mark, but that's not quite enough. So I'm going to actually help myself out with two other alignments. I'm going to drill a 1/4-inch hole at either probably here and put a little alignment bolt in there. Alignment bolt? Yeah, like a little, a pin basically, so that I can pin it, and that's when I know that my screws are all going in exactly the right place. One, two, three, four. This is one of them, am I right? Yep. 5, 6. Okay. Are you really serious? Is this possible that I'm not quite have enough? I ordered some closed-cell foam from Amazon to arrive today, and it didn't. I had some closed-cell foam, but it's not enough. You can use any kind of felt for a poker table. I decided to go with what's called speed felt because it's nice, high quality, it's beautiful stuff. This is actually what they use to cover pool tables with. And it's really nice stuff. Very, very tactile and delightful. And we're gonna secure it on this puppy in a minute. I think that might be it. I think I might have all the staples I need in the perimeter of this thing. Yep. All right. Time to cut this. I was going to say time to cut the staples. It's not time to cut the staples. It's time to cut the felt. But I was thinking about the piece of the camera, and I got it all wrong. Time to cut the felt. Here we go. That was me marking my screw holes from the underside. Oh, look at that. Pocket sevens, I'm in. I'm on the button. Let's do it. Yeah. This, an upholsterer's foam cutter. You don't really need one of these. They're like $350. It's pretty freaking expensive, but I bought it back when I was making TV money. Don't even want to know. All right, okay, so, they're both the top. Okay. I'll feel that tomorrow. While that's drying, I'm going to put a little tape on top of these holes to keep the fabric from doing its warp thing. Good enough. You know, the worst part is I bought a pneumatic stapler, but it didn't arrive. It was supposed to arrive today. It's probably going to arrive tomorrow. Oh, yeah. This is very physical labor. That was exhausting. Just a note, I didn't know the exact right methodology for attaching vinyl to a circular rail like this, but there was a YouTube video about how to build your own poker table on the cheap that was very instructive for me. Linking to them in the comments below so you can see where I get my inspiration. Almost every build I do, I check out some of what other people are doing. If it's aesthetic, I don't, because I want my own vision on it, but for this kind of thing, totally. So I think that's what we'll call a poker rail, and that's a poker table. Let us join these two things and make them one. All right, let's take, oh, it looks pretty. Oh, my table's in the way of my own table. All right, here we go. Whoop. Hey, hey. Okay, yeah, it's definitely a small poker table. This is a tight game. I didn't realize it should be bigger, but it is what it is. All right, so let's see here. All right, let's see. I'll start with 3 stacks of high society. So, ooh, we'll put you. Okay, Mr. Son of Beach, let's play some cards. Yeah, I thought my hand looked pretty good, actually. I hadn't shuffled them. That is my one-day build of my poker table, and it's a little rough around the edges, but I'm pretty pleased with it. And clearly, I need to build a bigger one someday.